And welcome back, everybody, to the BaseLINE podcast. I am your host, BaseLINE Newman. Now, guys, we have talked about a lot of sports on this podcast, but now we are moving over to mixed martial arts. This guy just recently had his pro debut MMA fight, and I'm no Bruce Buffer, but standing at 5'8", weighing 150 pounds, hailing from Las Vegas, Nevada. Please welcome my special guest, Mr. Bad Chad Decker. Chad, how you doing today?
Good. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Chad, to start things off, June 4th, you were at Soaring Eagle Casino in your home state of Michigan, and you had your first professional fight where you won by submission in the very first round. Talk about this experience and being able to not only have your first pro fight, but be able to win it in such dominant fashion.
Yeah, it was kind of a long-awaited pro debut. I've been an amateur in Michigan fighting for the past 3.5, 4 years now. It was good to finally make a debut, especially how dominant it was. I was pretty excited. It was really good. It was a good start to the career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's not your first round win. I mean, even in your first amateur fight ever, you won in the first round by knockout.
Yep, that was over in Motor City. I was back in November of 2018. So that's, 4 years ago.
Yeah. Now, going off of that, how does the atmosphere of an amateur bout compare to a professional fight?
For me, it was a little different because I had a long layoff. I was wrestling every year all the time. And then all of a sudden I had a big, 2-year gap where I was training, but I was also coming off of a pretty big injury. So I wasn't competing at all. So at that point, I think it had been almost 3.5 years since I had competed. So that was just basically the only thing, was to get out there and compete and just get things going again. For this one, I'd kind of had been a little active. So it was better to have fights just recently rather than, the long layoff period.
Now, Chad, growing up, how did you even get into mixed martial arts?
I've been wanting to fight since I was really little, but like I said, I started wrestling when I was 3 years old. So it's kind of combat sport is like all I knew. Me and my dad used to travel all over when I was young. So it was just me and him going to tournaments every weekend. And I've just always been used to competing.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you mentioned going to these tournaments with your dad, but you grew up in Grass Lake, Michigan, just west of Ann Arbor. How did your childhood really play into your love of MMA?
My dad was super into UFC, so we used to watch the pay-per-views all the time. I got hooked on the Chuck Liddell. Basically, when he started fighting Randy Couture, like, I was a real big Chuck Liddell fan. Used to love the Iceman. Pretty much from there, I would watch it all the time. We had boxing gloves and a mat. We had a mat in the basement, started out, and then it went to the garage. We would wrestle pretty much, I'd say 70% of the time, but there's a good percentage of time me and my brother would we'd get boxing gloves on and we would spar a little bit and stuff like that. So just growing up, not knowing a whole bunch about it, but still kind of actively doing it throughout the years a little bit. I guess just kind of always, steering towards it at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chad, just to put it bluntly, what is it like? What is it about just getting hit in the face that you enjoy so much?
Last couple fights I haven't been hit too much, so that's been good. But honestly, it's competing. I just love to compete. A one-on-one sport. It's super similar to wrestling. It's a super intense way of compete. It's the most intense way you can compete, and the more you do it, the more you love it. You know what I mean? And I've loved it since I started it back in 2017, and I knew this is what I was going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, no parent wants to see their kid in a fight, but how did your family react when you told them that you wanted to pursue MMA?
It wasn't super unfamiliar. So leaving college wrestling before I even went to an MMA gym, I said I wanted to fight. Like before I even had started training, I was like, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna wait for my knee to heal up. I'm gonna work this job, and then as my knee heals, I'm gonna go to Michigan top team. You know, I already knew what gym I was going to. I'd already looked around. I had a pretty good idea of how the next couple of years were gonna go, and just kind of went from there.
In the ring, you go by Bad Chad Decker. Where did this nickname stem from?
My boy Mondo Gutierrez, he actually gave it to me. I trained with him. He's out of Mercy, and shoot, one day he came out to Vegas and was like, "Dude, I got a nickname for you," and that just kind of stuck from there. So shout out to Mondo.
It's definitely a great nickname for sure. I've always found this interesting about MMA, but it's the fact that every fighter really has a different form of fighting, you know? And what I mean by that is different kinds of combat like jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, taekwondo, judo, just to name a few. But where does your fighting experience come from?
Obviously, the huge wrestling background. um, just kind of transitioned into me doing a lot of jujitsu lately. That's been helping a lot. Just being super familiar on the ground. Uh, and I like to box a lot. I haven't showed it as much in my past few fights, but you'll probably be seeing me stand and box people's ears off here pretty soon.
I would honestly wish you were here in person just so I could see an example of it, but there are so many different types of submission moves. For example, you won your pro debut with a rear naked choke, but how many different submissions would you say that you know?
I'd say I know how to do the majority of them. It's just about what's my bread and butter. My bread and butter, if that's what you ask, I guess, is a side choke for sure. An arm choke. It's a good choke for wrestlers. Um, that's probably going to be one of my top finishes in my next fights for sure. I could see me side choking people. Rear naked though, that's always right there, especially for wrestlers having people's backs and stuff. So those are going to be your two common ones. And then yeah, probably the third one would be like a Darce or something like that. But those are the three I've been working on a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I feel like MMA is kind of a lot like chess, where you really have to read your opponent and kind of predict what he's going to do next. How do you know when the best time is to really go for a submission?
Best time to go for a submission is when you're breaking people. So like with strikes coming from top, a lot of these kids will just break. You don't even have to slap on anything crazy, and they're just gonna tap, just looking for ways out. So basically, like my whole fighting style is to kind of give them a way out. You know what I mean? Like just strikes from top until they just want to give up a submission. They don't want to be there no more. To put it in uh, a sentence, I guess.
Yeah.
But a lot of that's basically what's going on without people understanding, like from an outside perspective. If you don't really know much about the sport, uh, that's a lot of what happens with submissions.
Like we just mentioned earlier, your first amateur bout was in 2018, age of 22, and you really showed up, knocking your opponent out in the very first round. But going into any of your early fights, were there ever really any nerves?
Was there nerves? Yeah, there was nerves. I guess it was just getting comfortable. Um, it was nice to like I had two draws at the beginning. It was nice to have those. So I got to go the distance, and I actually got into two like good little fist fights with this kid in Grand Rapids, and that was a really good experience. You know, understand like I'm not gonna just go in here and dust everybody. Like sometimes it's gonna be a fist fight, and that's when I was like, yeah, like I can do this all the time.
When you're in the ring, opponent facing you, what goes through your mind when you're fighting?
Just ready to go, ready to get my hands on them, make contact first, and just start breaking them right away.
Yeah, and going off of that, I mean, how do you get focused and ready to fight? Do you feed off the crowd's energy? Do you try to tune them out? What do you do to get focused and ready to go?
I just try to be as calm as possible. Basically, just control breathing, make sure that I'm not wasting any energy that's not going towards the fight. So the crowd, like I remember getting in, the crowd was a little loud this last fight, and it was nice, but it didn't like pump me up, so that was good. Just basically being able to control my own emotions at all times.
Obviously, a sport like this takes a lot of training, but walk me through what a normal training day looks like for you.
Got a morning practice followed by either some strength and conditioning, and then going into my later practice, or going. So like Monday, I'll go to a 9 a.m. at Extreme Couture, followed by wrestling practice, possibly followed by jujitsu in the later days. Then Tuesdays, I have a 9 a.m. followed by jujitsu at night, and then Wednesdays wrestling based strength and conditioning, uh, and striking class, and then Thursdays I usually get my sparring in. Followed also with the 9 a.m. So pretty much every day it's morning practice, then you strength and conditioning, then I'll do my later evening practices, and then also fitting in my mid sessions pretty much anywhere from Tuesday to Friday throughout that too, and then getting runs in on the weekends and stuff, and open mat and all that.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned sparring. I feel like a big part of any kind of physical sport like that, sparring is very important. But in your opinion, how important is sparring to your training?
The right sparring I think is good for sure. You know, you need to be able to trust guys, and you need to be going with all sorts of levels of guys that you're better than, guys that are better than you, and guys that you're getting in there and you're actually just scrapping with. You both are pretty even. I think the levels of sparring, all three of those are really good. So as long as you're hitting those three sparring sessions throughout your camp, I think you're doing pretty good.
Chad, I mean, months before your fight, you know who you're going to fight. You know who your opponent is. How much studying into your opponent goes into your training, and do you go into a fight with a different game plan depending on what fighter you are facing?
Yes, you do. To answer that a couple of different ways. Like for this camp, 8 weeks out, I had an opponent, and then he backed out 4 weeks out. So this one was a little different. I ended up getting a last minute replacement. That was why the catch weight. Uh, I did the catch weight is because I only had 4 weeks. I wasn't really sure if I was going to fight or not, and so I decided to go with the catch weight. And yeah, I guess 8 weeks out, it's nice. I watch my opponents, but at this level, I think you know, a lot of it is just getting in there. You can only study them so much, especially some kids they haven't fought in a while. Um, so you can only take so much until you're actually in there, and you can kind of get guys that have a similar look, but some people it's just not you're not going to get guys for. So um, just having the wrestling background of being able to control people helps a lot, because I'm not really too worried. I know I can go in there and control pretty much anyone in there. You know what I mean?
Going off of that, I mean, a big part of the best MMA fighters in the world is leading up to the fight, the press conferences where they just talk so much crap about each other. How's your talking skills?
I think they're all right. I don't really care to talk too much. A lot of kids in Michigan like to talk. I don't think they like to fight though. So there's that. A lot of the top guys don't like to fight the top guys in Michigan, but I don't know. I want to shake it up, shake things up next year, start fighting all these top guys, and just going from there. It could be fun. Just depends on who you're going with. It's I like the nastiest fight you can get it. So if you're fighting tooth and nail and you got a kid that's talking a lot and he can fight, I think that's fun. I think that makes for a fun fight. I think a lot of kids get ahead of themselves, and especially say more than they want to, and then they have to face consequences come fight night.
To be an MMA fighter, your body has to be in peak condition. What does your diet look like to ensure that you maintain that condition?
So I actually do a program, uh, paid $800. My girlfriend, Danny Schaub, she does my whole diet for me. We paid for her to take it's not even just a diet, but specifically on weight cutting. So I'm trying to think of what it's called, what program it was, what McGregor was doing. But they have this whole program, and you take courses, and then you take the tests at the end of the week or whatever. And it basically just gets you certified in how to cut weight properly. A lot of people don't know how to do it right. It tells you when to stop carbs, when to stop electrolytes. A lot of people, or not electrolytes, salt. A lot of people cut that stuff early. For me, I'm cutting that stuff like 3 days before, and it breaks down all my meals and everything. She knows more about it than I do. She has the app and has the whole system. But at the end of it, what's really cool is for the weight cut is it calculates all these numbers of like your body fat. You try to get your body fat, how much muscle you have, and all that, and it breaks it down into equations. And she does it all for me, and she makes sure I have a smooth weight cut pretty much the whole time. And it's been never made 45 since I was a senior in high school, and did it last March, made 45. So that's pretty big. And I was pretty nervous about that. And she kind of, took care of a lot of that, and basically makes I don't have so much stress, and kind of like can let go and be like, well, I guess we'll see how this goes. And it's been going good so far. But yeah, huge shout out to Danny Schaub. She does all that stuff for me.
No, I mean it's really that's a really extensive program for sure, but it's really nice to be able to have someone that you can go off of and you can work on that stuff together.
Yeah, it's called the Lock. Excuse me, the Lockhart program. A lot of people use them, but it's really good. If you don't know nothing about it, just look into it, and it'll help you as much as you can with your weight cut.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned fighting in Grand Rapids a little bit ago, but you've had 5 fights in Grand Rapids, more than any other city that you've fought in. What is it about Grand Rapids that makes you keep coming back?
I like Matt Frendo. Matt Frendo's a really good promoter. He's a really good guy. He's fair. He cares about the fighters a lot. Uh, so, just being able to trust a promoter that he's helping you build your career right. And that's what I like about Grand Rapids so much, is just Matt Frendo.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, with the Deltaplex closing, maybe we'll be able to see you at Van Andel someday soon.
Yeah. And if you haven't been out to a Grand Rapids show, I mean, it's there's a lot of cool shows in Michigan, and Grand Rapids just always seems to have the most crowd, the funnest crowd. A lot of the people get into those fights. There's usually right around 3 to all the way up to 5,000 people there. So it makes for a good turnout, makes for a good night of fights.
Chad, you've won the majority of your fights so far, amateur and pro. Only drawing twice and only losing once. But what do you try to take away from every fight that you participate in?
Try to see how calm I took the fight, how calm I was in there, and if anything, like if I was panicking in any spots and stuff, just basically just areas I need to work on is where I'm mostly taking. I was taking away a lot from all the amateur fights, just trying to, even fights I was winning, I was trying to just figure out where positions were at, where I didn't want to be, positions I was avoiding possibly, or just anything. But the past few amateur fights, man, they just kind of all went the way I wanted them to go, and everything was going pretty smooth. And I still have a lot of stuff to work on, but just filling the gaps is basically all I've been doing. Is just after every fight, just trying to fill the gaps.
Finally, Chad, obviously we just mentioned this in the very beginning of this episode, but you just recently made your pro debut. What would you say is your ultimate goal in your career?
I just want to be a world champion. That's all. That's all I'm going to be. I'll be a world champion one day. I'm willing to climb the ladder little by little, and I know the next couple of years are going to set me up really well to do that. And I'm prepared for what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chad, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I really look forward to following your career and seeing where it takes you.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, of course. But that's going to wrap it up for us today, guys. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the BaseLINE podcast. Thank you so much to Bad Chad Decker for coming on and talking about his MMA career. I am so excited to see where this guy's career can take him, and hopefully one day soon we will see him as a UFC champion. With all that being said, guys, please like, please subscribe. Please follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify for more content to come. But once again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the BaseLINE podcast. I'm your host, BaseLINE Newman, and we'll catch you guys next time.